programs for Camellia Rose, Georgia chapter on the Links Incorporated, of which Charlotte Jackson is our chapter president. The members of Camellia Rose, Georgia chapter welcome you to our live event, HBCU President's Roundtable. Our guests will discuss how COVID-19 crisis is impacting operations, specifically its student body, faculty, alumni, and funding. Our moderator is Dr. Nsinga K. Burton. Dr. Burton is an award-winning professor and co-director of the Film and Media Management concentration at Emory University and founder and editor-in-chief of the Burton Wire. She is also a member of Camellia Rose, Georgia chapter. Dr. Burton, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me. All right. Well, without further ado, I guess we're going to jump right in here. In case you all haven't been paying attention, HBCUs have been wrecking shop across the United States these days with these wonderful donations that have been coming in. We have our nation's first African-American and South Asian vice president, who's also an HBCU graduate. So we are blessed and happy today to be here and to have two presidents of two illustrious HBCUs here in our wonderful country. First, I'm going to introduce Dr. George French Jr., who is the president of Clark Atlanta University here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a storied university, as you all know. It's the largest United Negro College Fund member institution in the country and the largest private HBCU within the state of Georgia. It's also the first, let me say this again, the first institution to grant graduate degrees to African Americans in the country. All right, that's probably in the world. All right, so Dr. French has been a college president before. This is not his first term at the first term at the rodeo. He's been president of Miles College for 14 years. We're going to ask you about that wonderful partnership you have with Propel. Both of you actually have that. He's a nationally recognized leader and influencer in higher education and education policy. And he served 3 secretaries of education under 2 U.S. presidents and is a congressional appointee to the National Advisory Committee on Institutional Quality and Integrity. He's a 3-term board member for the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges. That would be SACS for you educators. Chair of the Atlanta University Council of Presidents and chair of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Association Council of Presidents and member of Metro Atlanta Chamber Board of Directors. French has also served as a member of the National Diverse Council of Regions Bank since 2011. You hold degrees from the University of Louisville. You hear I said that, Louisville. Miles Law School and Jackson State University, where you got your PhD. So welcome, Dr. French.
Thank you, Dr. Burton. My honor to be with you this evening, and of course to serve with my friend and colleague, Dr. Faison, a leader within this space that's just really making a name and doing great things. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Dr. Zachary Faison Jr., you are an Atlanta native, and you took the helm of Edward Waters College, which is in the state of Florida's first independent institution of higher education and first historically Black college or university in July 2018 as America's youngest HBCU president or chancellor. You all have got so many accomplishments. I mean, it's crazy. So I had to read through all 12,000 of yours, Dr. Faison, and pick out just a few of the hits that are on here. So you were recently named by the Jacksonville Record and Observer as one of Jacksonville's 6 top newsmakers of 2020. And you are, you've done so many things. You're under your leadership and the support of a dynamically assembled team of dedicated academicians and administrators. You've experienced, EWC has experienced unprecedented success, having most notably eliminated the college's debt, because we're going to talk about that and impact of COVID on these colleges. You have added so much money that is not even funny. We're going to talk about that later too. $3.5 million state funding increase in the college's recurring state funding. So you've done that. Both of you all have these laptop institutions. You've become laptop universities. I could just keep going on and on and on. But I will say that you have done amazing things with the city of Jacksonville. I mean, I could just keep going. So anyway, because in the interest of time, you can fill me in later. Fill us in later with all. I mean, literally looking at 2 pages of accomplishments. I can't even imagine. I can't even figure out what I want to highlight most. So let's just jump into this conversation. All right. HBCUs, Vice President Kamala Harris. Give me what are your thoughts around the nation's first vice president being a graduate of an HBCU, and how will that impact your institutions? And let's start with Dr. Faison.
Well, thank you, Dr. Burton, and certainly I want to thank you and the Camellia Rose chapter of the Links for hosting this and inviting me. And certainly I'd be remiss if I did not recognize and thank President French. He has been a mentor to me as a more seasoned president. There have been times when I have called on him for his sage wisdom as a griot in this space. He always picks up. So certainly want to say hello to my great friend and colleague, President French. But to your question, it's a transformative time. I think I think the secret is out, and I say secret because I think it's been not a secret to any of us, but I think other folks are recognizing the contemporaneous relevance of just what it is that historically Black colleges and universities produce. When you see the ascension of our sister Kamala Harris to the highest seats of the political infrastructure here, having ascended to becoming the first African American and first woman vice president, it just again speaks to our product and the tremendous work that we have been doing for centuries in terms of producing these high quality graduates that go on to make impactful marks, not only in the nation, but throughout the world. So I just think that again, the secret is now out, that we've been doing this work for so long. And I think that it's high time that we're becoming to be recognized for that. And so I think that in that sense, it's something that certainly this most recent achievement represents for our institutions collectively.
Thank you, Dr. Faison. Dr. French?
And again, Dr. Burton, excellent conceptualization, perspective, question of where we are within the nation. And to have the former Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President Harris, is a representation of what my colleague, President Faison, said. This is what we've been doing now for centuries. The truth of the matter is we've led communities, we've led cities, we've led states. We've been behind the scenes, and especially Black women. When I tell you, the sisters, I'm sitting here in my home looking at you can't see it, but a lovely portrait now. The portrait is worth a lot of money. But what's interesting is that it sits on my wall, and were it not for one small nail, that portrait could not adorn this room. And that's who sisters have always been. Behind the scenes, they hold up the family. And Kamala Harris has represented, of course, Howard University, which I always recognize. Well, I'm president of Clark Atlanta University. Listen, you always pay homage to alma mater for us all. And for us all, Howard University, whether you went there, attended, matriculated or not, that's the capstone within higher education. Now, Dr. Burton, I didn't say that was the capstone within higher education within the HBCU community. In my opinion, Howard University is the capstone within higher education. So for Howard University to produce the Kamala Harris, to produce and I'm being very selfish now, my Basheen T. Welch, who came out of Howard University, and so many leaders were not surprised. And I think she's going to represent us. I have no doubt that she's going to represent our nation extremely well. And she's going to set a new standard within the whole political advocacy arena. And we're glad to have her. And we're glad to have not just, again, Howard, but all of these schools, all of these 100 plus universities. We've been doing this. And again, Dr. Faison, he said it. We've been doing this for centuries. It's nothing new. Now, it's new to the external arena and world, but that's what we do. And we're going to take full advantage of this opportunity to engage the bicameral political atmosphere which we find.
Okay. Yes. So as you said, it's no secret to us, right? That's why you're here.
Yeah.
We have been here for Black folks for centuries. One of the things I wanted to talk about, though, in regards to this new vice president, is the importance of having someone like her in this position as we try to navigate this COVID environment, particularly in the education space. So as educators, COVID hit and it threw everything. Everything went off course, and people had to be creative and think about these things. But one of the bright lights, hopefully, with this administration is that they are already working on helping to solve these problems with COVID. Can you talk a little bit about how you responded when you first realized, or when we first realized that COVID was going to be the monster that it is, and its impact on your institution, Dr. Faison?
Well, I think, to be honest and fair, we're still responding. Let me say that it is certainly a dynamically changing situation, day by day, hour by hour, at least for us on our campus. But as I kind of hearken and think back to late February, early March, when all this really kind of began last year. Our response. Let me say this: I think that the response has required a heightened level of collaborative thinking, collaborative action amongst all the constituencies here on our campus, our faculty, our staff, our administrators, our students, everyone, to really begin to try to chart the pathway forward. And so, kind of at a macro level, when I think back to last year, we sent everyone home initially, but we learned some quick lessons in that regard. On my campus, about 90% of my students are Pell eligible. About 87% of them are first generation. So while there were a lot of institutions that sent everyone home, and that was kind of the knee-jerk reaction, or maybe not knee-jerk, but that was the right decision for that institution, we quickly pivoted to think back and take some different steps that might have been a little dissimilar from what you saw some other institutions take, because we quickly found that many of my students, and a lot of times we make the assumption that they had a home to go back to. Mm-hmm. A lot of us, think, oh, well, we need to shut everything down, send the students home. But for many of my students, being at Edward Waters was a safer space from a COVID perspective than going back home. They had issues around food security. Many of their parents were frontline workers. And so the space that we offered to have a single room, 3 meals a day, be able to have access to the technology that's on our campus was actually a safer space. So we initially sent everyone home, and then we said, you know what, you can come back. And so we have, throughout the summer and through the fall semester, we've been operating under a hybrid model where we do have we gave students the option that for those students who and their parents who had the provision for them to be home, those students have been taking their courses and continuing their degree programs of study remotely. But then at the same time, this past fall, we had about almost 500 students that were on our campus. Mm-hmm. And again, we made that decision thinking about the best interest of many of our students, because again, the assumption which we made, and we've been learning, I think, and pivoting throughout this entire process, that we needed to offer that to many of our students because, again, it was a safer and more edifying space for them to be on our campus than in their homes. And a lot of times people didn't think about that. And it's something that I think we had to grow to appreciate as well.
Thank you. Dr. French?
So very similarly, we had to migrate almost 4,000 students from an on-ground to online experience. My faculty, many of whom had never taught online, were very cooperative, collegial, and willing to get the training at the last minute. My students, who were used to one of the most beautiful campuses in America, having to remain home. And Dr. Faison, he hit it on the head. You know, when you go to university, you can basically be whoever you are, right? Whoever you want to be. You can tell people, I come from a huge mansion on top of the hill. Okay. And you may not necessarily have come from that. You may have actually come from a 2-bedroom home in South Georgia where you really can't concentrate with 8 people in the room and you're trying to learn online and you're using mom's computer. Okay. It's a stark reality of what our students have to deal. Don't even talk about abuse, whatever kind of abuse could be going on in homes. And Dr. Faison, he hit on it. You don't know what people were going away from. They were not necessarily, Dr. Burton, you and I may have come from homes that were stable, and all of our students didn't come from those places. They were escaping some things. So to have to send them back home for us was a very difficult decision, but it's a decision that the Atlanta University Center, I have the privilege of being the chair of that center now, which includes, of course, Clark Atlanta University, Spelman College, Morehouse School of Medicine. When we couldn't have our students back on campus, it wasn't a business decision, but it was a decision that we had to make in the interest of the health and safety of our students. So it was pretty rough, but we did well. We wound up with about 3,800, I should say, students online. They matriculated well, but again, you don't know what people deal with at home, right? So I love the fact that at Clark Atlanta University, if you want to speak to a counselor, we have those services available. But when you're in Wyoming, you know, how do I make sure that your mental health is intact? That's one of our biggest challenges, making sure that all of their mental health issues are being dealt. And we went overboard. I'm gonna tell you, you know, we have this online component, but when I saw critical masses of students in areas of Chicago, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, then we made sure to engage mental health counselors in those cities so that my students could actually go to see them. I purchased in my life, I've gone to, you know, I have 4 children. So I purchased a lot of laptops, but I've never gone to a store and said, I'll have 4,000. I purchased 4,000 for all of my students so that they could make sure that they have the hardware, the software. We purchased hotspots, and we made sure that they had what they needed to matriculate. But again, Dr. Burton, it's not a perfect environment, and we're all learning, and we're all in this together. And when I look at Faison, what I'm telling you is that's the new level of camaraderie amongst presidents that hasn't existed before. We call one another
all the time.
All the time. That hasn't always been the environment amongst HBCU presidents, but that's the new environment that's helped us to work our way through this as well.
And I love hearing that. That's one of the positives, because I think when we talk about COVID and its impact, you can focus on the negative, obviously, right? But to be able to have that vision and perspective and to identify the positive outcomes, like more community and amongst the presidents and collaboration and working together, that's very important. I think speaks to the resiliency of HBCUs and their leadership. One of the things I want, which leads me to collaboration, I want to talk about this Propel project, the Propel Center that has been all over the news. You'd have to be living under a rock, people, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's really
I didn't hear about that.
How did I hear about it?
I didn't hear about it yet.
I saw it on the national news. It was on CBS. It was on, no, okay. But it is a really technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, the joining together of HBCUs and Apple and the Southern Company to create a center that is dedicated to really not only innovation and learning and growth, but also development of curriculums and things of that nature, and working with faculty and students and staff. It's really a complex and amazing project. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So, yes, and it is a phenomenal initiative. It's cutting edge. It's one that Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, as you noted, made the announcement. The first one was with Gayle King on her show, and then he did it the following day on Fox with Chris Wallace. Mm-hmm. And he announced the $100 million initiative. And basically, Southern Company made a commitment of $50 million for the promotion of HBCUs. Mm-hmm. They're half of that $50 million to build the Propel Center. Apple made a similar donation to HBCUs. So we have a $100 million really plus initiative called the Propel Center. The Propel Center will be built within the Atlanta University Center complex. It will be a state-of-the-art facility with Apple products, right? Okay, from laptops, cool computers to holograms of individuals who might be teaching our students while they're in Sweden. But instead of just having them on Zoom, we have that holograph of them in front of the room. The latest cutting edge technology to teach our students mass media arts, communications, journalism, entrepreneurship. I mean, the plethora of what they need to operate within the marketplace. And the thing is, while it will be in the university, Atlanta University Center, it is a national initiative which will touch all HBCUs. Mm-hmm. I was speaking to my alumni president here, Fenda Hillman. She and her husband are CAU graduates. But the thing is, they don't just love CAU, they love all HBCUs.
That's right.
And what we're going to do with this virtual platform and on-ground building is we are going to serve all HBCUs. And in my 17 years of being a college president when I was at Miles College and now university president at Clark Atlanta University, I've never seen an initiative that brings together. And I say this when I keep mentioning President Faison, because he knows my initiative, our initiative with the Higher Education Leadership Foundation several years ago that we started. And what that's all about is bringing us all together, right? Helping all of our brothers and sisters and saying, now you've ascended to the presidency, but you're still gonna have some questions. And if you have questions, you call me. Right. And I've been president for 17 years. That's great. But guess what? I'm watching Faison because he's down there knocking it out of the park. And I'm gonna ask him, bro, how are you moving so quickly and aggressively? Give me some of that energy that you have. And that's the relationship that we have. Propel is the same type of concept. Yeah. How do we all come together as HBCUs, garner the resources of Southern Company, of Apple, of Ed Farm, of Propel, of JP Morgan, of Goldman Sachs. How do we bring those all together to help all HBCUs? And that's what Propel is really all about.
Excellent. Dr. Faison, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and we are just ecstatic, for Edward Waters. We have been invited to be a partner and have solidified that partnership, and certainly are appreciative of the work that Apple is doing along with Southern Company. As you know, our conduit into that space was actually through President French, who kind of invited a number of HBCUs to hear about the Propel Center and decide if they were going to be a part. So we're excited to be a part of it. And I will tell you, it really is right on time for us, because when you talk about at least what we're learning at the beginning stages in terms of Apple kind of being the technology hub and arm of the Propel Center, and then the Southern Company being an energy hub, it really, again, was right in line with the work that we're doing at Edward Waters. When we talk about the promulgation of, we have about 4 new academic programs that we are excited to be onboarding, hopefully this upcoming fall, one of them being computer and information science. So, we talk about some of the different facets of the Propel Center. Again, it's going to really, really offer so many expanded opportunities to our students, even some of their initiatives around justice, Propel Justice, Propel Startup, social justice and entrepreneurship, professional development, 5th-year fellowship programs, that this it's almost a smorgasbord of just opportunities for our students to plug in throughout the HBCU space. So again, we're excited about the opportunity and really looking forward and happy to be partnered with the Propel Center and Apple and Southern Company at EWC.
It's fantastic. So, I mean, in the midst of this COVID pandemic, right, you have so many blessings and so many wonderful things that are happening at each of your institutions. What are your thoughts around the vaccine, and how do you plan to serve as leaders of getting information out about the vaccine and helping people to get vaccinated as it becomes more available to larger populations?
So,
go ahead, Mr. President.
Thank you, Doc. So, I think that the African American community has just cause to take pause sometimes about experiments, which, I mean, it's an experiment. And fortunately, when you look at Moderna and you look at Pfizer, you look at the opportunities, it's the initial trial tests have indicated that it's a very effective vaccine to this pandemic. That's the beautiful thing. And we know that on a national scale, not just disaggregating our communities and bringing African Americans in for the tests only like we did at Tuskegee. That's not where we are as a nation anymore. So the beautiful thing is, I don't like the term the herd. You have to have the herd. I don't even call it that. I think we need to, but the point is, you have to have a critical mass of the population engaging in the vaccine. Otherwise, it can't be effective. So if we have a critical mass of African Americans who don't engage the vaccine, we can't get past COVID-19. So we have to have a level of trust. We have to have schools like the Morehouse School of Medicine, who helps to inform us under the dynamic leadership of Valerie Montgomery Rice.
Yes.
And they kind of inform our decisions and let us know as a community it's safe. It's basically the only way out right now. And so, I am taking the vaccine, and I'll take 2 shots. And if they tell me I need to take 4, I'll take 4, okay?
Absolutely.
So my family and my community and campus community are safe. So I think that we need to fully engage the process. And with what happened on yesterday, I think that we have cause and reason to believe that we can trust the process as long as we are engaged.
Yes, yes. Dr. Faison.
Yeah, I would just echo those same sentiments. The one thing I think that I would underscore is just the incumbent responsibility that I believe that HBCUs play in leadership at HBCUs in terms of distilling truth in science. I think that our community should be able to look to our institutions, look at our academicians, look at our leaders to distill truth and make sure that we are communicating fact based in science. I think President French makes a great point with regard to the fact that there's some reason for some discomfort, for some distrust. And so I think that again, what we have to do is be at the table. I'm blessed to be a part of a statewide COVID-19 vaccine task force, along with the president at Florida A&M University, that is at the table, answering the hard questions, letting the folks that are in leadership in terms of our state legislature and our local county departments of health know that, hey, these are some questions, these are some of the concerns that are emanating from our community. And so how can we get out in front in terms of providing information and making sure that there are open lines of communication to dispel some of the myths. And then also around equitable distribution. That's a conversation that we're having right now. We know that disproportionately communities of colors are being impacted. So one of the things that I know that I'm pushing our task force is I know that we've looked at this from an age perspective. But I'm pushing our task force at the state level to begin to look at how do we roll out, and even at the federal level, how do we roll this out in a way where we can achieve equity in terms of the vaccine reaching deeply into our communities. And so, I think it's something that we are highly focused upon going forward. I haven't had the opportunity to get my vaccine shot yet, but as soon as they make it available, I'm with my distinguished colleague. I'm ready and willing to roll up my sleeve and take the vaccine. So again, I think that we have a responsibility to emulate or to demonstrate the behaviors that we want those that surround us to emulate. So we're looking forward to doing that at EWC.
Well, one of our viewers and our immediate past president, Rebecca Young, has a question for you, and it is, how can we address and discourage the hesitancy that many African Americans have towards the vaccines? And Dr. Faison, you talked about community truth telling, distilling truth. Which strategies do you all have to combat, the hesitancy and to demystify all of this rumor and innuendo that's circulating around the vaccine?
Well, again, we are blessed to be on a statewide task force right now that is having meetings throughout the state. Here in Jacksonville, our campus will soon be hosting some virtual Zoom informational sessions that will be open to the public, open to our local community here, where persons can come in and ask those questions of medical professionals. And again, we'll have our faculty that will be a part of that. As we, answer some of these difficult questions. Well, why did this take so long? I've heard that you can't get a vaccine in this amount of time, and to really not be flippant in our responses, but to hear them, to acknowledge them, and then to be able to respond in a way that's based and rooted in the science. And so I think those are some of the things that we can do. And I think that we as leaders have to demonstrate the efficacy of this process. Again, if you're hearing, presidents and pastors, I belong to an African Methodist Episcopal affiliated institution, and we know that the Black church is seminal and very instrumental in terms of influence. And so the faith community, along with the HBCU community, really being at the forefront and saying, hey, you can trust this. We've been at the table. This is something that we're going to need for our community. I think will go a long way to helping to discourage the hesitancy.
And I concur with my colleague. And being of the African diaspora, we continue to hold to some of our traditions. One of those traditions being the oral tradition of communicating information. I mean, bottom line, we speak to one another, we go to the barbershop, we go to the hairdressers, and we go to Big Mama's house and have a conversation about what are we going to do? That's where the decisions are made. I've got a national alumni president at Clark Atlanta University, Devin White. He and his wife Joy, they're just people that our community would gravitate to say, Devin, what do you think about the vaccine? And the answer that Devin gives him, or Joy gives them, is going to guide their decisions. So what we just have to do is come around the fireside, have that chat even at the barbershop, to say, listen, what's going on? You think we need to do this? Yes, we don't have a choice. It's not even an optional situation now. We haven't had pandemic in over 100 years since we last had pandemic. So we were not prepared, obviously. And to be very frank with you, Dr. Burton, it's interesting because I see some comparative analyses as between the United States and China, United States and North Korea. I tell you what, one of the differences is, yes, if you're in the United States living in Atlanta and the governor tells you, I hope that you all don't go out, please don't go out, that's still our call. Mm-hmm. But if you're in North Korea,
right,
China, and they tell you don't go, you are not.
Don't go out in the Philippines, you might be shot.
Okay.
They're not playing. But their numbers are low because they're not playing.
Yeah. I mean, great. So we have liberties in the United States that we take advantage of, that we love, but those same liberties allow us to go out when other countries don't. Right. And we acknowledge, Dr. Faison, that we are in the United States. And I tell you what happened on January the 6th, if me and my brother, it would have been a lot of dead folks in the street. If those have been black people, nobody's running up in the Capitol like that. If those have been black folk, Doc, am I right?
Threshold.
Oh my God. So we're dealing in this parallel universe as the United States. Dr. Burton.
Absolutely. So do you all have plans to engage students in getting the word out? I know that there's a school called Clark Atlanta University that has this outstanding mass media arts program.
Could you say that again?
School at Clark Atlanta University that has this outstanding mass media arts program. Is there any plan with fantastic alums, graduates? I'm just saying, I know a few. Are there any plans to engage your students in getting the word out to help demystify and to educate about the vaccines?
I'll say, since you mentioned Clark Atlanta, absolutely, that's the key. Our society has shifted so much to the social media platform that, here I am thinking that I'm cutting edge, and here I am on Twitter, and those folks have left Twitter. As far as that young generation, so my thing is, how do I best communicate with them, because they'll get the word out. Right. And what I love about students at Clark Atlanta University, at Edward Waters College, is they still hold the respect of the elders. Okay. And when you look at empirical data, I'm not talking about anecdotal. As far as this whole COVID, for the schools that went back on campus, when you look at the comparative analysis as between PWIs and HBCUs, our students did much better. Okay, am I right, Doc?
I'm a witness. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you know why? Because we're still family, and we're still the ones that will walk down the promenade, Dr. When I say, I'm gonna tell your mama, if you don't act right. That's right.
And they respond to that. Our students respond to that. Yeah.
They respond, and I will call your mama. And that's the family atmosphere of an HBCU. For an administrator to pull a young lady, beautiful young lady, heading in the right direction, but if I see you hanging out with the wrong dude, I'm going to ask you, go down to the registrar's office and check his GPA. Before
There you go. There you go.
That's what we do. My brother.
How about you, Dr. Faison?
Absolutely. I mean, the students are at the forefront of everything that we do. So I do think that we have to first start with educating our students.
Yes.
In terms of, again, the science, rooted in the science. You know, what does this vaccine mean? How did we get to where we are in terms of the vaccine? And then certainly utilizing them in the spaces in which they occupy. I think President French hit the nail on the head. They know the spaces. There's a new medium out now. I consider myself somewhat hip. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and all, but now they've got this new thing. I think it's called Challenge or some kind of new thing. But again, the students know all about it.
What is it, Faison? What is it, man? You gonna have to make sure.
I'm gonna get you, Mr. President. But it's something new now. No, Clubhouse.
Clubhouse,
yeah, that's the new Clubhouse.
Dr. Burton knows what it is.
It's like Clubhouse, Twitch.
Clubhouse, Twitch. So they move, but getting them the information and empowering them to be able to share that information is going to be critical, because again, they know the spaces in which their peers are operating, and they will hear it even best from their peers. So absolutely, that's certainly a part of our plan to make our students forefront in our communications efforts.
Yeah.
Okay, and let me ask a question about I guess just HBCUs in general and universities, specifically. Can they mandate the students have to get the vaccine before they come back to school in the fall? Like, or will students be required? Can they require students to do that, or faculty or staff? Is that legal? Y'all know? Just ask it for a friend.
I'm gonna let Dr. Faison.
Well, I will say, first of all, this is not legal advice. I have to give that caveat because I am a barred attorney in the state of Georgia. So
I know somebody's an attorney up there.
Let him answer the question first.
That caveat. I don't believe that we can require. We'll put it like this. I don't believe that we can require that in terms of. I think that may run afoul of some HIPAA kinds of protections. It may also run afoul in terms of our eligibility to access federal funds. And so I'm not sure about requiring that every student, every faculty or staff person have the vaccine. I think we can strongly encourage that. I think we can make it available. I'm not sure about requiring that. Now, I'll say this though, private institutions may have some wiggle room there, as I'm kind of thinking through your question. There may be some, because the student can decide, hey, well, I will choose not to attend institution A if they're going to have that as a requirement. So I think we have to be careful about that, requiring students, to have the vaccine. And I will say that again, it harkens back to what I mentioned earlier. I think you can only make that kind of, at least on our campus, I would only be comfortable making that kind of requirement assuming that there's equitable distribution. So you have to assure that there's access, and in many respects, the institution is not controlling access. Now, if I have it on my campus to be able to distribute, that's another matter. But I think, you really have to think through requiring persons to have a vaccine when a vaccine is not universally available at this time. And so, again, I think that those are things that we have to think through, as we really kind of navigate this space. And that's my answer today. Again, a dynamically changing environment, we could get more information and different information a month from now that then may change kind of our thought process and how we're evolving around that particular subject matter. So
do you all think that schools are going to go back to what does higher education look like, particularly at HBCUs post-COVID, after we get this under control, after we figure out what's going on, after we figure out this vaccination, dissemination, and education, all of that? What does it look like post-COVID? What does that environment look like?
So, Dr. Burton, let me add that I think Dr. Faison, and it's interesting that you have two students of jurisprudence on the call, and I think he answered the question most appropriately. We have a couple of principles within jurisprudence, stare decisis, as far as the decisions that have already been made, precedents. You have re ipso loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. And re ipso loquitur to me is important because I think in the long run, it'll speak for itself, because all of us have immunization requirements that students have to have before they come on our campuses. And what occurs is you have precedent. And my brother earlier spoke of seminal decisions, and we haven't had the seminal decisions yet to address whether or not we can require students. And right now, again, we require certain immunizations, and we could see a time in the a law where we include COVID-19. Okay. Right. If you need a vaccine for COVID-19, perhaps today we can't get away with requiring it, but maybe 2 years from now we would. Bottom line is we have to watch out for the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff. And if I have to, I'm not speaking for any other HBCU president, but if I have to go to court because I have 4,000 students on campus and 10 students refuse to be immunized, I will have to just deny them that, and we'll have to go to court and figure it out. That's just my truth. I'm just not that liberal to say, well, no, if it's not the law. No, I'm saying no, we'll stretch it out. And that's what Faison knows as a lawyer. Also, if we stretch it out, I'll go to the Supreme Court, I'll go to appeal, and it'll take me 10 years.
Right,
and,
get there.
Yeah, and I've got a $110 million budget. Now, if you and your family have $110 million to fight against that, let's go.
So be it, right?
But I'm going to protect my students.
Well, let me translate that for you. So what Dr. French is saying, viewers, he gonna find a way or make one when it comes to this vaccine. Right?
There you go. There you go.
I like that.
Okay, we have another question. And I have loved this conversation. I just love talking to HBCU presidents because you all are so brilliant and so funny and so interesting. But which brings me back to the HBCUs. Why should, and this came from the audience, it's a great question. Why should an HBCU be at the top of any prospective students list to attend? I think this is from our sister, Sheila. Yes.
Really?
Why?
Dr. Did you see the sister in the kind of purple?
Yeah, I think she had some kind of purple. She had some pearls on. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah,
the vice presidency of the United States. Is that? She came from an HBC. She came from Howard University, right?
So. I think so, Doc. I think so.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Faison, Dr. Burton, to answer that.
Yeah, and I'll say it again. I'll use the legal terminology, res ipsa loquitur, that President French mentioned. The thing speaks
for itself.
I will tell you. I mean, if I were talking to a prospective parent or student, I mean, you just run down the numbers. I'll use something that my grandmother used to say all the time. She used to say, "Son, the proof of the pudding is in the eating of it." So, I mean, when you talk about HBCUs being responsible for 75% of all Black PhDs, 46% of all business executives, 50% of Black engineers, 80% of Black federal judges, 50% of all Black attorneys, 50% of all Black pharmacists, 75% of all Black veterinarians. I mean, you can run the list. I'm almost befuddled as to why you would choose anything else if you intend on your child or you becoming a professional in the 21st century America. So, I don't know of any other choice that a prudent parent would make. I'm just being honest. When you look at what it is that these institutions not have produced, but are still producing today, we're talking about contemporaneous relevance of what these institutions represent today and what they're producing today. Again, the thing speaks for itself.
Your Honor. Yes, spoken. Brother, listen, you presented the case statistically, empirically. It's Ray ipso locator. It speaks for itself. You're a bad brother, man. I like that.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. I'd like for you all each to talk about something, the one thing that you think, and I know y'all like president, so it's hard to do that, but the one thing that you think that you love the most about being a college president and being at your current institution.
So if I could, I had a unique opportunity in becoming president of Miles College in 2005. That was in October. And in May of 2006, I had the privilege of conferring the baccalaureate degree upon my daughter, my oldest daughter.
Wow.
Right? And then she went on to medical school. And 2 weeks after finishing medical school, she got married. Dr. Faison, guess what? I was a pastor.
Wow.
So I gave her a degree. I presided over her wedding.
Wow.
And now she's a successful physician in Birmingham after graduating Miles, right?
Wow.
Then my son graduated from Morehouse last year. My daughter graduated from Spelman this year. And my youngest daughter is now here in school at Woodward Academy in Atlanta. For me to see the impact and influence, and that's why I asked President Faison to answer that last question, because this is reality for us. We see people's lives who are changed. And I've been asked, and quite honestly, I've been invited to corporate America outside of higher ed or to the legal field, and I can make a lot more money than I do now. But to see a kid who comes on your campus, first year freshman, pants hanging, sagging down, and they walking around trying to be this, and then let those professors get them in those classrooms and talk about Plato, Aristophanes, Euripides, I mean, and then they just get it, and then see them a couple of years later walking across campus looking like, bam, yeah, I'm going into the boardroom and I'm going to take over. Okay, for me, that's all of the reasons why I engaged this profession. And one thing about it, you might be off track for a moment, okay? But the Bible even talks about that you might lose your way at some point, but in the end, you will find your way. And to see these students on these campuses, once they find their way, okay, I'm fortunate to be the president of Clark Atlanta University, where W.E.B. Du Bois spent virtually the entirety of his life socializing African Americans. On that same campus, Dr. Burton, I had the brothers who actually developed the Negro National Anthem right there on my campus. Martin Luther King Jr. was at Morehouse, but he walked across my campus. Spike Lee was at Morehouse, but he took all of his camera and theatrical at Clark Atlanta University. These institutions, Faison said it best with all of his statistics. You can tell he's a bad brother. He was ready. Okay.
I learned from the best.
This is where we do it. This is where it happens. This is where the rubber meets the road, which is why you saw the sister walking into the vice president's office today. Okay. Looking like a Link and an AKA all day long.
Absolutely.
Dr. Faison?
I mean, I think President French summed it up, beautifully. There's not much more I could add. I think quite simply, I would just say that having the distinct privilege to literally make people's dreams come to fruition. I mean, you have persons who dream of becoming a teacher or an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or a social worker or an artist, a writer. For them to have that in their mind's eyes at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and them to begin that journey on your campus, and then 4 years later, you've seen the tremendous transformation to make that dream, help them shape that dream into becoming a prescient reality. It just, I mean, it's unfathomable. Words can't speak to the excitement that I know that we experience at EWC when they walk across that stage and you're able to give them that degree and see them soar. There's nothing like that experience. And so that for me, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. That for me is what resonates most in terms of why this experience is just the most rewarding professional experience that I've ever encountered. It is something to behold. It really is.
And Dr. Burton, I would add to that, when you listen to Dr. Faison, the cohort of HBCU presidents, what you will find is that none of us, when I tell you virtually none of us, would have to do this work. Yeah. And exponentially, the salaries that we're paid, we could make exponentially more in the marketplace any day of the week, but we're committed to this work.
We choose this work.
That brother right there went down to Florida, and if you look at what he's done in the short time coming into the SIEC and building stadiums, I mean, nobody, you can't go out and hire someone just in the marketplace to do what he's done.
We've been blessed.
But that's what we do because we're committed to this mission.
That's it.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I would like to thank the members of the Camellia Rose Links, particularly the programming committee, Andrea Albritton, Kimberly Brown, Joy White, those who were involved in putting this together. Melanie Jones is our producer, director extraordinary.
Oh, Dr. Burton.
So wait a minute, I have to do this. You know, I'm president of Edward Waters, but you just shouted out Andrea Albritton and Melanie Jones. Both of them are graduates of the Albany State University, my alma mater. So I have to acknowledge them and say thank them for inviting me to be here this evening. I have to do it. I'd be in trouble if I did. HBCU love all the way around.
I'm with you because see, until she said Joy White, I couldn't understand why Devin, her husband, who's my alum, as is Joy, he doesn't stress me about many things, but he's like, have you gotten that invitation? You're gonna be there.
Right.
Joy, Devin, thank you.
Yes, that's how we make the wheel turn. So would love to thank them first and foremost for putting this together. This was a fantastic idea. Of course, we'd love to thank our guests, Dr. French, Dr. Faison. You all have been delightful. I actually host an HBCU series for NMPA, Black Press USA, and this has been one of the best that has happened.
We've had a great host and moderator. Thank you, Dr. Burton.
She's been awesome.
Phenomenal.
Faison, but she said a couple of things that gave me a little nudge, like, you didn't say it straight out, but when she said find a way to make one. So tell us about your pedigree in her.
That rang in my ear as well.
Well, I have had the pleasure of being a professor, and I'm the former chair of mass media arts at Clark Atlanta University. And I have taught at this small little school in Charlotte, North Carolina called Johnson C. Smith University.
All right.
Let's go Golden Bulls. Dr. Yancey gave me my first opportunity to teach at the higher education level, post-graduation, completion of my PhD. So I will always be thankful to the HBCU family. I'm a member. I consider myself a member, and I've worked very closely with Howard University and Morgan State University and my other endeavors. Wow. So even though I did not attend an HBCU, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, which I call a black city. I went to a black middle school, black high school. So I did not attend an HBCU because I thought that it was lacking. It was that I would have gone to school with everybody I went to school with.
Oh yeah.
All right, we can get to this. All right. It's all
You
right.
at Richmond?
That was it. But I have much love for HBCUs.
Or you at Richmond, Dr. Burton?
I'm sorry?
You at Richmond? I was at the T.C. Williams School of Law in Richmond.
Yes. Richmond.
And I worked at Virginia Union for a time.
Yes.
And then she said, "Hey, Faison," she said, "Dot Yancey." You don't.
When you say that, I mean, you just say that name and just mic drop.
That's it. That's it.
Queen mother.
Talk about amazing women. And Virginia Union, I'm just going to take this moment to shout out my bonus mom who passed away this past weekend. She's an alum of Virginia Union University and an educator for 37 years. A fantastic woman. Thelma White, I love you and we'll miss you. So when I saw Virginia Union in your bio, of course, remember her, and we're going to say goodbye to her this weekend. But
we're sorry, Dr. Burton. We're sorry.
When I think
my condolences, my sincerest condolences.
Thank you. But when I think about HBCUs, I think about her and her love. Virginia Union University, my bonus dad, his love of Howard University, my aunt's love of Howard University, all of the HBCUs and what they've done for our families and our communities. And we are resilient, which is why even though COVID was hard on us, we came back. We always come back and come back stronger. Iron sharpens iron. So I just want to say that.
If you'll allow me, I have to do this shameless plug for President French. I have to. There is a Clark Atlanta University thread running through with Dr. Burton and Dr. French, and I want to close out that triumvirate by letting you know that if my grandmother were still alive, she passed away in 2019, she would be so excited to know that I am on a panel with the president of Clark Atlanta University, because she was a Morris Brown College graduate, but spent 20 years in the registrar's office at Morehouse, and then ended her career at her last 20 years. So she was in the AU Center 40 years. Ended her career as the circulation librarian in the Woodruff Library as an employee of Clark Atlanta University. So I want to just shout out Ruth McClure, because she would be so excited to know that I had the opportunity to engage with all these CAU Panthers on this evening. So
Call her name.
Ruth McClure. Ruth McClure.
Say her name.
Say her name. Say her name.
Well, thank you so much. And again, it has been a pleasure. This has been wonderful. And we thank you for kicking off our series of events. We hope to do this again in other ways, more live streams, but we wish you continued success and keep reaching for the stars, making it happen with your illustrious organizations, Clark Atlanta University and Edward Waters College.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Brother President, as always.
My brother, always a pleasure to serve with you.